Imagine being the most famous writer in America. Imagine your words being whispered in every tavern, from New York all the way to London. Your name, a legend. Your face, a ghost that haunts the dreams of millions. But now, look closer. You're sitting in a cottage, so cold, so bitter, that your dying wife has to sleep under your old army cloak because you simply cannot afford a blanket. You haven't eaten a full meal in days. And for the poem that made you a superstar, the one they'll study for the next 200 years, you were paid exactly $9. This isn't just a story about a writer. This is a story about a man who was hunted by poverty, hunted by his own mind, and hunted by a black bird that refused to leave his shoulder. Today, we go behind the ink and the madness. Welcome to the Shadow of the Raven. To understand the darkness in Poe's work, you have to understand the void in his heart. Edgar didn't start with a pen. He started with a loss. By the age of 3, both his parents were gone. His father walked out, and his mother. She died of tuberculosis, coughing up blood in a cramped boarding house. While Edgar watched, it's a scene he would witness over and over again for the rest of his life. He was taken in by John Allan, a wealthy tobacco merchant. That's where the Allan comes from. But make no mistake, this wasn't a happy home. Allan saw Edgar as a charity project, not a son. When Edgar went to university, Allan sent him with just enough money to get there, but not enough to survive. Imagine being a brilliant student, surrounded by the elite, but you're so broke, you have to burn your own furniture just to stay warm in the winter. Poe turned to gambling to pay his debts. He lost everything. And when he turned to his father for help, John Allan slammed the door. Edgar was alone, truly alone. No family, no money, only a growing hunger that only poetry could feed. In the middle of his chaotic, drifting life, Edgar found a flicker of light. Her name was Virginia Clem. To a modern audience, their marriage is uncomfortable, scandalous even. But to Poe, Virginia was everything. She was the only person who looked at the broken man and saw a king. But the curse of his childhood was patient. One evening, while Virginia was singing at the piano, she suddenly stopped. She coughed, and a streak of crimson stained her lips. It was the Red Death of his stories. The same monster that took his mother was back for his wife. For 5 agonizing years, Poe watched her die. They lived in a tiny cottage, so destitute that on the coldest nights, Poe would put his old West Point cloak over her, and their cat would sleep on her chest, just to provide a little more warmth. It was in this atmosphere of slow-motion grief that the Raven was born. Every time you hear that bird croak, nevermore. You aren't hearing a Gothic trope. You are hearing the heartbeat of a man who knows that no matter how hard he prays, the woman in the next room is never coming back. When The Raven was published in 1845, it became a fever. Children followed Poe down the streets, flapping their arms and croaking, "Nevermore!" He was a superstar. But fame is a cruel ghost when you're starving. Poe received that one-time payment of $9. While publishers grew rich off his nightmare, Poe was still struggling to buy firewood. In 1847, the light finally went out. Virginia died. Poe's spirit died with her. And then we reached the night of October 3rd, 1849. Poe was found delirious outside a polling place in Baltimore. He was wearing clothes that weren't his, cheap, ill-fitting rags that belonged to a stranger. He couldn't explain where he had been for the last 5 days. For 4 days in the hospital, he fought off invisible shadows, repeatedly calling out the name Reynolds, a man no one has ever been able to identify. His last words were a whisper, "Lord, help my poor soul." Poe once said, "The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague." He spent his 40 years standing in that shadow, translating the language of the grave for the rest of us. He died a failure in the eyes of his time. But in the eyes of history, he is the king of the midnight hour. Remember Edgar, the man who gave us everything for $9 and a broken heart. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark side of literature, hit the subscribe button. Join us as we uncover the tragedies behind the world's greatest stories. Tell me in the comments, who should we talk about next? Until then, keep the lights on.